all right, you've got this big, huge challenge and it's scary. And it's one of those things where like when someone tells me, I mean, it's so bad, but when someone says I can't do something, I'm like, well, I'm going to give it a try. Like when, so I always, that's how I kind of always have been, which is like, well, now if you say I can't, then I'm definitely going to do it. I'm just going to, I don't know how successful it'll be, but I'm going right into it. So, well, it's like mountain climbing or swimming with sharks, or I don't know, not wearing pants for the last year, just shorts. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, I always go like, what is the challenge? So if I'm hosting if it was like a big, like when I host the ESPYs a few years ago, I was like, this is a crazy situation where I'm going to be telling jokes in front of some of my heroes, and every professional athlete that I've ever admired is going to be in front of me. That is fear. And then I go like, how are you going to overcome that? And what are you going to do?
Yes. Hello, everyone. Better Together with Maria Menounos, and I am not Maria Menounos. I'm Mr. Maria Menounos. Kevin Undergaro, Maria, is continuing to be on the mend. But we're here today, and we're really excited. I'll start.
So excited.
Yeah, I'm really excited for this one. This is more my wheelhouse today. Just going to let you guys know. Follow what your head is telling you and work hard. That's the big secret. And that really just speaks to me. But that is from Joel McHale, who is our guest today. Joel McHale is an American actor, comedian, writer, producer, stand-up comic, and television host, best known for TV shows such as The Soup and Community, as well as a long list of movies. A father to 2 boys and a husband of 25 years, Joel overcame dyslexia to carve out a diverse and ongoing career. Yet for all he has accomplished, it feels as though he is just getting started. A lightning wit that harkens to the likes of Letterman, he may very well be the greatest host actor in Hollywood history. He was also very kind to my wife, Maria, during her time at E! Please welcome the great Joel McHale. Joel,
wow.
Thank you for doing this.
Can you come to my home every morning and say that thing aloud to me?
Well, I mean,
was really nice.
It's true, though, because when you think of, I was thinking today of the Letterman, Conan, and, the guys who are outstanding hosts with that lightning wit. And with Talk Soup, I was saying to these guys, because they're all big fans of The Soup, I'm like, that is such a host-driven show. It's not the format. You have to have that host who's lightning fast. But when I think of all those other guys, you're also doing great acting, great comedic acting, and I do feel like you're just getting started. So I don't know of a better host actor in our business. You need to own that, my friend.
I'm going to go with Greg Kinnear.
Yes,
Oscar
you're right.
Nominee.
You're right. No, you're right. Greg Kinnear's right there. But we didn't see enough.
Alum.
But he was almost like in sports, like the career was cut short. Like I don't think he did enough hosting. He came in, he killed it.
He did jump off hosting pretty quick right into award-winning acting. So
yes,
I said I'm staying at E until they throw me out, and then they did. They threw us all.
Really. I mean, we talked about that. Like I remember just you and your producing partner was a great guy, and we would just be like, "What are they doing? They're getting rid of you." Like, okay, I've got this great new idea, new novel concept, Kelsey. Here it is. Mm-hmm. Let's get rid of all of our stars. We'll save a ton of money. And then the network is going to just be huge because we can make the stars. And then they found out, not so much.
There was a moment where I remember when you guys came on, and then of course there's Chelsea and there's Joan and there was The Soup and they had Seacrest and they had this good, it was a really good lineup, and it all just went away. And I didn't understand it. I mean, obviously I was one of the people that was told to go away, but it was very weird. And obviously now it's paid off.
Yeah.
Wait, hold on. I'm not bitter. Look, they've been nice to me. Nobody's there is left. It's like a episode of Star Trek where people keep disappearing off the ship and they can't explain why. But yeah, no, it was good time. I remember hanging out with you guys there. It was good. They had that entire office building.
Yeah.
I mean, that thing was.
You know what it was? They were just moving too fast. Like we're obviously the migration was to digital, but I remember saying to them, like, guys, you're doing this too quickly. I know, like you're way too ahead of this. and you're gonna bury the network, which they did. The business is talent and ideas. That's it. And you're both talent and ideas, but you're not going to get by. But you're not going to get by the other way. And it's okay to bring in younger or people who don't have names, but then you pair them with the names to make them into stars.
Boy, yeah. Talk about. Kinnear's the perfect example. I just stood on the shoulders of the people that came before me. So.
Have you met him, Greg? Have you ever met him and talked about?
I met him once years ago with Dennis Quaid. It was a movie that he was starring in.
I'm already laughing.
Kinnear did not. People were like, "Hey, it's the guy that's it's one of the people that one of your successors," and he didn't know who I was. And Dennis Quaid was like, "He's the guy that hosts your old show," and it was really. Believe me, I got recognized by Dennis Quaid, so I was very happy.
Right, and then what did Greg say after that?
He was like, "Oh, hey," he was very friendly. I was like, "Don't worry, you're a movie star. You don't have to. You don't have time to watch basic cable. It's not your thing. I get it."
And by the way, Dennis Quaid, pretty cool. Dennis Quaid knows you.
Yeah, and now his son Jack Quaid stars on The Boys on Amazon Prime, and that thing is
our best thing on television, obsessed. I think.
Oh, I love it so much.
Best writing on TV.
Oh, it's so funny. It's so good. It's so wonderful. I can't wait. I watched that thing. And there was for as many hours that show is, there was no gap. I just powered through it.
So when I see The Boys on Amazon, Joe, you know what I think? I think the superheroes are metaphors for Hollywood stars. And I'm pointing them out to each celebrity I know. Is like, oh, that's blank. That's blank. Do you feel like that too?
Oh, boy. I just thought it was... I thought I didn't think that, but I just thought, oh, yeah, what about all the collateral damage that a superhero can do? Because you think about like when the Hulk fought Iron Man in that huge Iron Man suit that drops from space. You're like, what happened to that city? Aren't people pissed? And I guess they kind of were, but this one is such a wonderfully subversive, and it's just so well done. I'm excited now when I think about the third season, and they're barely shooting it now. So I'm just thrilled. My kids love that WandaVision, and I love it too, but I've not
done it yet either. No, have you done, what's the one on HBO Max?
Search Party.
Search Party?
No.
Give that one a whirl. Yeah, give it a whirl. It's
good times.
One of those ones exploding during pandemic that now they're going to renew it or whatever. But yeah, for comedy. Joel, I didn't know you were born in Italy.
Look at me.
Yeah, but was it one of those things like just for a brief moment and then back when your dad was a dean there, or did you actually live there?
Oh, I lived there as a very small child, but yeah, my dad was the dean of students at Loyola University Rome Center, and my mom was a student. Scandal. I mean, he was a student dean, so they weren't that. I mean, they were pretty close in age, but that was one of those things where it was just happenstance, and my parents had us 3 kids there, a bunch of tow-headed, half Irish, half Norwegian kids. So, my cousin grew up there. He looks exactly like I do. And so he's a full Roman. And when we would walk, because I've been back, because they lived in Rome for years and they still live in Italy. But, he would open his mouth and the Italian like vendors, whatever, would listen to this perfect Roman accent and they would just stare at him like he was an alien. It was pretty funny. I would a whole different life if we had stayed. My dad my dad was making hardly any money, and I think he wanted to start his kind of business career in America. So we moved to Seattle. And at that time, Seattle was not the center of the universe for tech and culture, which it became in the 90s, obviously, for a bit, but it was very different. There was Boeing and Weyerhaeuser, and it was a lot different than Rome, which was, subtropical. But now they've been there for 40 years in Seattle. That's a long answer.
And but that's kind of your home. And it's funny because I'm a huge Russell Wilson fan. I
Okay,
actually
let's just pray. Should we have a prayer circle right now
Yes.
that he doesn't leave?
Oof.
Yes.
You guys got to get him some help though.
We
That's the
we
thing.
need to buy. I mean, that offensive line needs to. I don't know. They need to add more. I don't know what they need to do, but they need to rectify that problem
Well, I think
quickly.
this is not the show for it, but I think Carroll is more defensive minded. So unfortunately, they just don't put a lot of time. It seems like into the
Yeah, I mean, the weird part is that no one's paying attention to the first half of the last season, which we were unstoppable and the line was doing great. But I just, as a Seattle fan, I am terrified.
Yeah, you don't want to. Look at New England. That's where we're from.
Who's your team?
New England Patriots. So we're right.
Oh,
so we understand. You lose your guy,
right?
and that's it.
Yikes.
But
then it's
over.
What do you think's good? I mean, I know this is not usually the regular. What do you think they're going to do in New England?
Because he's such a mystery. What's his name? Belichick, and he's such a guy who doesn't panic.
Yeah.
Your guess is as good as mine. He's zero idea. I have friends who are writers and stuff here that no idea. But going back, with Russell, we use him as a lot of times to describe situations when I'll say to these guys, I'm just going to Russell Wilson it. And what they mean by that is I'm just going to do it myself. Like, it's like at some point in the game, you just see this guy's like, okay, I have nobody. I'm just going to run the ball as much as I can on my own. He's a great guy. But growing up, Joe, you grew up dyslexic.
Oh yeah.
What was that like? Yeah. What was it like growing up with that?
Well, I was born in the 70s, just barely. No, I was born in 71. So there was not a lot of help or understanding from the public schools. And so I was told after they would test me, they'd be like, he seems smart, but then he starts reading and it's not good. They told me I was a slow starter, which was really great. To be told that you were slow as a kid.
No.
And now there's so many wonderful resources and there's a lot more understanding about it and about how it works. And believe me, when I got to the soup, I could not read teleprompter, and that was half of it was due to anxiety. It was like, oh, they're going to find out that I can't really read out loud. Wow. And so that it would take me 4 hours to get through 22 minutes of jokes. So E was really understanding at that point. They were really nice. And then over the years, I lost that anxiety, thank God. And that really, because you do learn how to read as a dyslexic person, but you'll never be as fast as a typical learning person. But there was always a lot of anxiety, and people would be cold reads and reading cue cards and reading teleprompters was terrifying.
Especially in our business with this so much pressure. Yes, I understand. So Joe, what did you do to curb the anxiety?
Cocaine. And I thought I would just kept buying small white dogs and lemons, and that was weird.
Poor little Winnie.
I would get to a point where I would go over the script so much that I could basically say it almost verbatim, because memorization is not the problem. The problem is the words coming off the page. So I would just the only really way you can do it is just by practicing.
So work.
So it's just consistency and now I read so much faster than I used to. And I don't have any shame about it the way I did as a kid, where I was like, that's probably why I told so many jokes. Cause we would have impromptu spelling bees in 5th and 6th grade. And I was like, here we fucking go. So yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, because I remember those days. I always say the golden age of bullying in the 70s. That was so I can't even imagine. It's interesting because even in your quote, you said about working hard. And I feel like that is kind of, I hate to say it because I know sometimes the new generation doesn't want to hear it as much, but I feel like leaning in and doing the work is what kind of nipped the anxiety.
Yep. Getting better at that thing that you're not good at. And that just takes practice and hours. So it's one of those things where you hear well, how do you stay in shape? I don't know, exercise, and we're like, you exercise and you don't eat cake all the time. Oh, that's it. Yeah. You just do that every day and then you'll be in shape. And so it's just putting in the hours. And I got so lucky because E at that time took me under their, it really helped them. They really took care of the show. And at that time, nobody was watching E on Friday nights. And we were such a cheap show that nobody watched us for a year. So I had a whole year to screw around and screw up. And that was such a gift from them, unbeknownst to them. And as slowly the ratings started to climb, so did my confidence in reading. So now I don't have I know that I understand that I'm going to screw it up, which I took, I knew that when I would watch, I learned so much from David Letterman as a kid from that. I mean, every time he wasn't happy with a joke, he would point it out through the rest of the show.
Yeah.
And obviously that has to do some part of his neurosis, but what it did was it made the joke that usually all his jokes were working, but it made it so much more if you point out the thing you screwed up, it's even more funny. So I definitely learned how to do that when I would, because half the soup was me commenting on something that I screwed up.
And have you ever explored did the shame have any effect on you in your adult years?
Oh yeah. I mean, I think there was and I never really believed all this shit, but so my sons were, you have to write down every time I swear.
No.
When my son was diagnosed with it, my older son, I was the doctor started describing all the traits of a dyslexic person. I'm like, hey, that's me. And then this is 7 years ago, 8 years ago. And then she was like, oh yeah, I was wondering which one it was because it's passed down from the parent. And I was like, yeah, that's me. And then I told her that I had been told I was a slow starter. And the doctor literally just went like this, just to put her head down. I was like, I cannot believe they told the child they were slow. That I've already said that, but
yeah.
So I think there was a side of me that knew I couldn't win school, that I couldn't really be good at it. So and this is how I did everything in my life, was just I'm going to find a way to beat this system. And everything always kind of started slow. And then as things started to get going, then I would always find a way to win, which for school was cheating, which I was damn good at. And when I entered high school, I had a 1.6 grade point average. The first quarter was a 1.6. And by senior year, I was a 3.8 student. What? And that was through getting with teachers that I knew weren't too hard, readjusted. I would cheat in chemistry because I was like, there's no way I'm going to learn that. But then I loved history. And so I did everything to be good at history because I loved it. And so by the end, I just knew how to get. And then I got on the football team in college. And that, at that point we had all the tests. I don't think that's the case anymore. It's very hard to do now. But I just found it because I really wasn't interested in school. So it really just became about sports and performing.
And it seems like it just made you work harder and find hacks and workarounds, but that literally served you better, later. I mean, clearly served you, but do you think, when you think of the shame that the teachers put on you, and then maybe even the shame of your child getting it, has that affected you at all in your adult years?
No, there was no shame with the kids because in the last 25 years, there's been so much research on it, and there's been so much shining the light on it and celebrating it, because they come up with all these theories as to why dyslexia exists. And they think it goes way, way, way back 20,000 years to when this is a theory, but I agree with it because I like to feel like I'm special. But they think it was the people in the tribe that thought differently than the typical thinkers, the people that were had a better way to grasp more abstract ideas, and to go like, I'm going to go look. I learn differently, so I'm going to be one of the scouts that goes out and looks for something for the tribes, whether it's food or water. So we were just that's how this kind of that kind of the brain developed for the people in the tribe that wouldn't just do the regular work. They would have to go do something else. And that would usually be, exploring. That's the kind of idea behind what they think. That's one of the theories behind it. So that is all empowering. And I know that I wouldn't be like going into like everyone told me, and as you probably know, like most people that go into entertainment are insane people. And because it's not a business that makes any sense, and
none,
and it's tricky, and it's very difficult to be good at, to be successful in it and to be solvent in it. So, and everyone looked like me. I'm sure you growing up as people, everyone in my class were getting law degrees, and I was just like, this is crazy. There's no way so and everyone thought I was insane for, doing improv theater 4 nights a week. And I was just like, I'm going to do this until the bad acting police come and arrest me and make me get a real job. But so I think having dyslexia absolutely pushed me out of the typical way that people do stuff. And so I know that. And so that always made me feel like, oh, you're different because you thought that way, which is, makes me feel better about myself. But I think that's half the reason why I went into entertainment. And also I love it so much.
And you also have a quote about fear. I operate off of fear almost exclusively.
Yeah, there's a lot of that.
Can you explain that?
Well, it is, this is probably due to the psychology behind the way I survived in grade school and high school and academically, which was just, all right, you've got this big, huge challenge and it's scary. And it's one of those things where like, when someone tells me, it's so bad, was when someone says I can't do something, I'm like, well, I'm going to give it a try. Like when, so that's how I kind of always have been, which is like, well, now if you say I can't, then I'm definitely going to do it. I don't know how successful it'll be, but I'm going right into it. So, it's like mountain climbing or swimming with sharks, or I don't know, not wearing pants for the last year, just shorts. No, I'm kidding. But, yeah, I always go like, what is the challenge? So if I'm hosting if it was like a big, like when I host the ESPYs a few years ago, I was like, this is a crazy situation where I'm going to be telling jokes in front of some of my heroes, and every professional athlete that I've ever admired is going to be in front of me. That is fear. And then I go like, how are you going to overcome that? And what are you going to do? Then I'm having a good time once we get all the jokes down. Then I'm like, oh, goal. Let's do this. Let's go get it. So then it drops away. So there's a moment of, I'm not sitting there petrified, but there's this moment of like, can I do this? I don't know if I can do this. This is weird. And then once I'm in it and once I've worked on it, then I'm okay.
I feel like, it's hard. I work, I see Maria and other like female friends we have. It's fear really cripples them. Whereas I think a guy, we have more bravado. We're like, I always tell Kelsey, just a lot of the guy hosts I've worked with and stars too. It's just like, nah, bring it, bitch. I'll jump in and do it. I'll make some mistakes, bump my head. Whereas, Maria, it's like she just wants it to be perfect. And then, she's either going to say, well, if it can't be, I'm not going to do it. Or she's going to be so stressed to make it perfect. But I see in a lot of women that they're afraid, and I'd love to see them be able to meet their fears like that.
Oh, well, I don't know if it's a gender exclusive, or not exclusive, but I did stand up for the first time on Saturday in about since June or something. And then I hadn't done it since Feb. So basically I did it once in over a year. And I was like, I don't know how this is going to go. So it was not fun. It was not fun beforehand, but then it got fun because finally I was like, okay, I can relax up here. But like, does Maria do the thing where it's beforehand where is it always, because I always beat the shit out of myself after I perform, but does she do a thing where she's not sure beforehand and then it kind of goes, oh, okay, so I knew what I was doing.
Yeah, I think so.
Out.
Yeah. Once she's in flow, she's okay. And I think that's kind of the lesson, just do it. With a lot of people, it's like, seems like you just.
I see that because I've talked to huge comedians that are beating themselves up. And I'll be like, oh, hey, good. You're just like us. And that made me, I've never really, it always freaked me out. I've never met like I'm trying to think of someone just like, yeah, I did it again. Freaking nailed it. I continue to work miracles up here. And now I shall get on with my perfect life. I really don't know anybody like that, that just, I don't know, maybe.
Well, the comedian world is different. That world is intense. It's dark too, and they're all neurotic. Yeah, in that world, I've seen some hosts and actors be like, "Fucking crushed that." I'm like, no, you really didn't. But
that is the other side of it. Is that what's worse is that if you think that you nailed it and you really didn't, but you go through life going like, "How do I do it?" and that's worse, I think, than a person that is constantly questioning what they're doing, which is striving to get better at what they're doing. Because, I mean, could you imagine having a pilot going like, fucking nailed it again. Man, and I was like, what are you kidding about? The landing gear collapsed on that thing. I was like, yeah, but that's not my fault. I mean, I nailed that shit. Freaks me. I know people. Like I met a couple actors. They're not very successful, but I'll be like, how did that audition go? They're like, it was terrific. And I'll be like, oh, okay. So then you got it? Oh, I don't know. I'm not sure. I mean, they definitely, I'm like, ugh, man, I wish I had that confidence. And then I realized, that wouldn't help me.
Well, because there are, we always hear on this show anyway to just be present and just be in the moment and, do that audition and enjoy the audition process and move on. And I get it in theory, but the reality is when you want to achieve great things, whether it's playing for the Seattle Seahawks or acting in a movie, you have to achieve and you have to overcome, and you're gonna have to be a little neurotic, I think, or, to check yourself and to work harder. I don't know. I think that,
you got to be prepared for what you're getting into. I know that.
Right. The Sopranos, this is the life we chose.
Yeah. I mean, it's like what you said, let Russell do his thing, but every little thing he's doing comes with hours and hours of practice at that thing. Right.
Yes.
And yes, he's had to improvise quite a bit, but he's just so good at it. And because he's learned so much. It's like the guy is freaking prepared for every game. And I think that's also why Brady, everyone, it's legendary, his preparation, right? He knows the zip codes of the grandparents of the wide receivers, or the defensive backs. He knows their social security numbers. So, that's the sort of thing where it's like you do all this stuff, and when you get there, you're like, oh, I think I'll be okay.
Yeah, I did the work. So going back into stand-up, it's scary for two things. One, you haven't done it, but it's like comedy today to me is really frightening. When I see what you can say and what you can't say, and are you concerned about that? Do you have to temper yourself?
I don't not know. I mean, yes and no, but I always kind of go. I haven't felt like it's gotten. I know some comedians are like, I can't say what I wanted to say, and I was like, yeah, because what you're saying is racist. But I think the culture of comedy is a constantly evolving thing, and I see mostly older comedians complaining about that stuff.
Yes.
And it's so you meet the culture where it is and you push it, obviously, but But I don't see it as, oh my gosh, I can't say any. I don't see that like that at all. I have not experienced like I know that some people have said colleges are way too sensitive. In the last 5 years, the colleges I've done and played, they've been the greatest audiences that I could ever hope for. So it's not. I've not been in a room yet where they've gone like, get him. That hasn't happened yet. So I'm sure it's going to happen. But no, so I think the culture of comedy, I mean, it's like The Boys. I don't think that show could exist 10 years ago or 15 years ago.
Right.
That thing it's on the very cutting edge of what, I mean, you have the lead superhero is a white supremacist. I mean, that is just wild, right? And it's just, there's all sorts of things that couldn't exist. I think it goes back and up and down. And like people are like, you can never do All in the Family now. I'm like, well, no, you can't do it now. Not because that show existed in that moment and it was a perfect cultural moment. But now there's other shows that are absolutely commenting on the culture now. So in conclusion, I'm much more concerned about how my hair looks when I'm on stage.
And it looks fab, and the beard looks fab too. Good. Just saying.
Well, I trimmed it a little bit. This is I'm just a big Kevin Costner Yellowstone fan.
Oh yeah,
I am too. It's outstanding.
I actually have not seen it. I hear it's great.
It is very good. Well, he makes good choices. That's why I knew your film was going to be good, and we're going to talk about it because I'm like, oh, thank God it's Joel in one of his films because there's certain actors who you can bank on making good choices.
Oh, I've been in some shit. I'll tell you that. I'm not going to say what it is, but you know that.
Well, I mean, listen, I think today it doesn't matter like it did before. I think back in the day there was like a body of work and whatever. Today it's like, I know people going and making $500,000 for like a weekend shooting something in Europe.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? For a DVD you never see.
But I think you're right that Costner's just made really, I mean, they're not all, like The Postman was a little, I mean, I know it was a big hit, but Postman's not 20 years ago, but he's made really good decisions in his career. And he's one of those actors that knows his ability. And there's some that refuse to acknowledge what their lane is. And he knows his lane and he is good, man. Yeah. He's underappreciated for what he does.
Joe, you're one of the most self-assured people that I've met in this business, honestly. And
wow.
To the point that when I watched your Vanity Fair video where you talk about what a day is like in Joel McHale's life, I was just like, wow. I was just really blown away. But when you think of, you had dyslexia, you had the anxiety issues and shame, but the way that you've ended up in this, I see you in a self-assured state, and maybe that's what we see and maybe not what's in your heart. But what are some of the things you attribute that to? Is it just the work?
Oh, no, it's my wife.
I was going to ask about that. Yeah.
Oh no, I don't know what I would be just a blithering pile of, like hair plugs and crappy wardrobe. And no, I would be, without her, because without her being kind of the rock in my life, that would be very different, I think. She's the most like adult person I know. And I say that with great, she's the adult in the room in the best way, in that she's super smart and mature, and she's dealt with me for 27 years. So I, without her, and then, we had two boys, and, I know that this is such a typical answer, like, well, without my wife and kids, I would really be, but it really that changed my perspective. I became 2% less selfish when I had boys, maybe 3, we'll see. But I also think, establishing a really good community of people, and everyone thinks that LA is a vapid, horrible, transient place where no one gets to know each other, which is true. No, but we've established some of our, best friends here that can tell me that I'm being an idiot, and I don't know. And also, faith in God. So that really helps too. And that, that's obviously another huge part of it for me.
Really? I never knew that. I mean,
as you know, I'm a pastor.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I just, all those comments I made about women should look more like Melania Trump. Ooh. Did you see that guy?
Yes, I love him. More of him, please. Please. Why do we have to cancel some of these people who entertain me so much? Please.
Oh, well, I was like, now he's on leave. And I was like, I realized now, I was like, what the fuck were you thinking, you idiot?
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
What an asshole. Jeez.
I know, but these people exist. That's what's frightening. And you're in a position of power.
How long have you been with Maria?
22 years. Not as long as you.
Yeah, I mean, and I would say would you agree that you're each other's rock? Without each other, 100%. What would happen?
Oh, I say it all the time. I'm please don't leave me, please, please. I'll be good. No, I wouldn't be anything without Maria. 100%. It changed my life meeting her, and I think it's funny because I know a couple of other big stars too that have the one rock, and in the children, and it does make such a difference. And I feel like in relationships, there's give and take, and you have to know when. I always say in our house, we go with the hot hand, and Maria's the one with the hot hand, just how it is. So my job is to be the role player where I fill in all the gaps and do all the other things, keep the trains running on time, and I feel like your wife does that too. And I think in relationships, we have to have ebbs and flows to kind of know for each other. And I bet you anything, like you're probably spilling all of this stuff onto your wife, and she's being like, you know what, you're okay, Joe, we'll get through it, or,
Well, she'll be like, hey, maniac, why don't you calm down?
Oh, yes, be like, I get that too.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, she'll be like, here we go. Yeah. She's like, she'll be like, yeah, my 3 children, including my husband. Yes, that's that. Yeah. So. And we have 3 dogs, and they're all boys. So she's just like surrounded by penises. But yeah, I dragged her down here from Seattle, and we thought this was going to be like a 5-year fling of a career thing. And now it's been 21 years here. So, boy, I'm old. And so, but when I hear people go like, man, you get to Hollywood, and if it goes well, then do you want to play around? I'm like, I would run back home. I needed the sanctuary of, that and that steadfast relationship, because Hollywood gets a really bad rap as being an insane place, which it is, but the business is so unpredictable. That is what is kind of, I think, unique to the business, is that it's art meets commerce, just like saltwater and river water. And it's that in-between area that gets very weird and murky. And so having people that you can rely on is just so key. There's a really great book by Bruce Campbell called If Chins Could Kill. And he starred, in Army of Darkness and Briscoe County. And he was on Suits forever. And he's one of those guys that he put out his book going like, 99% of the actors are just journeymen, working their butts off every day. And the 1% gets all the press, and there's everybody else. And he wrote a really nice and eye-opening perspective from somebody who was a working actor, but, wasn't the biggest star. It was pretty great.
And those guys, even in your film, Stephen Root, they make the business go around to me. These guys are I tell every young filmmaker, like, forget trying to get the big giant name that you're probably not going to be able to afford, that's not going to really dedicate themselves. Fly in for 2 days, a Stephen Root, which he's probably too big now, but fly in one of these solid guys. They're going to make your film real. They're going to bring out the best in everybody, and they're not going to break the thing, but break the bank of the production. But
Stephen Root's a really good example. You couldn't probably have named a better example of one of the best actors you're ever going to find, one of the nicest guys you're going to find, and the guy doesn't stop working. And I was like, just do that and you'll be okay. And then he's also the most pleasant person on set. But you look at that show Barry that he is on, that Bill Hader created.
He's hilarious.
It's just,
right.
Yeah, it's it's if I don't know what to compare it to. If Bill Hader is Michael Jordan, Stephen Root's the rest of the team. I mean, he's everyone on that show is fucking amazing.
I mean, Henry, a fellow dyslexic, is incredible on that.
But to go toe to toe with Bill Hader, I mean, obviously Winkler, everybody on that show is very special in how good it is. But Stephen Root shows sides he just can't. I mean, so and this house shows you how cool. I'm in this movie. We just shot it with Kristen Bell and Vince Vaughn, and there's a small part, and they were like, "Do you think Stephen Root would even consider this?" And I'm like, "Let me text him and see." And he was like, "Sure." And I'm like, "Oh, this is
my God.
Money."
One day he worked one day, and I was like, "Gosh!" And they can't. And the directors are like, "He's so good." I was like, "Yes, didn't you see fucking News Radio 25 years ago?"
I mean,
he was amazing.
Yeah, they make the business go around. You know, it's funny with Hollywood. I always say, you know, on Wall Street we've got fortune on the line, but out here we have fame and fortune on the line. So you not only have greed, you have sick. So we have, you know, so it's art meets commerce, but then there's a lot of narcissism involved, which to a degree drives the greatness as well. But it is tough, and I think it is about having your circle, and then your rock and your wife, and then being resilient like you have been, which I think you got from growing up. You know.
I mean that's from my parents. My dad. I remember my dad always going, because we grew up. I ended up growing up in a very affluent neighborhood. It went from not very affluent to it went from a neighborhood my parents could afford to nobody could afford. And they bought their home for $100,000 or $90,000 in the 80s. And it just it's gone up like 300%. I mean, some crazy number. But my dad would always go, "Hey, not bad for white trash," from Chicago, which is where he grew up. He was like, "Not bad for white trash." And I was just like, "Yep. Keep that perspective, and you should be." And he worked his ass off, and I was like, "Oh yeah." And my mom worked. I mean, they're both full-time working parents, and I was like, "Oh yeah, if I do that, then I'll probably be okay." And I saw when I played football, I watched these guys put entire football teams on their backs, 75,000 people showing up to see them every Saturday, and they're doing school full-time. I was like, "Oh yeah. That's about the level you need to maintain to really get stuff done. You just have to have 3 full-time jobs all the time." And so I was like, "Oh, okay, that's what I'll do."
And you hopefully. It's interesting you mentioned the faith in God, you know, because most comedians are, you know, it's funny, or even I was saying to Kelsey, a lot of smart people I felt like 20 years ago were almost too smart for God. But then I go back to Einstein believed in God, and I'm hearing more like a Deepak Chopra or some of these other really smart people we've had on the show here. It's like, no, it's all about my belief in God. And so I'm just impressed to hear you say that.
Oh, yeah. I'm still I'm a baby when it comes to that stuff. And again, my wife is so much more mature than me. But yeah, without faith, and I would probably just be dead by now. I would have just done something really stupid. But yeah, I mean, it's been since I was a teenager. So, and everyone was just like, "You can't believe in Jesus if you go to Hollywood." And I'm like, I don't know. If that's going to stop me, it seems like, I don't know. That just seems stupid, but no, you'd be surprised. And people always they talk about Hollywood, which is like when this business got started, it was mostly started by Jewish people who were thrown out of New York because the Protestants would not allow them to work there. And you're like, this entire faith, has been here, making this wonderful whole thing come together. So I was like, so what are we talking about, guys? Because you can't walk 2 feet in LA without running into a synagogue or a church. So I was just like, it's everywhere. So get used to it.
Yeah. And I think faith is so important, and we all have a different version of God, and that's fine. But I think there's definitely, there's something to it. Maria, every night, Joel, we have a little fireplace mantle in our bedroom, and there's little Maria, so cute. She goes over and she just leans over, and I'll I'll be like, Maria, it just came out on Hulu. It's unbelievable. And she'll just put her hand up. I'm like, but 90 Day Fiancé is awesome. No, hand goes up. And I'll go, oh, shh, prayer time. And Maria does her prayers every night.
There you go. That's pretty cool. Pretty amazing. Greek Orthodox?
Yes. Yeah.
See, there you go.
I was a Catholic, and then I
don't mess with the Greek Orthodox.
No, you don't. No, they keep it very tight. God, I don't even know if I remember how to do a rosary. Do you remember how to do a rosary?
You bet I do.
Yeah.
I'll not forget. I was an altar boy.
So was I.
Yeah, and like when I learned, because I'd always, growing up Catholic, it was these cliches of, the Stations of the Cross takes forever, or you're gonna go do the rosary, you're gonna do this many Hail Marys. And I heard like the history of saying the rosary, which was so many people way back when didn't read, and it was the way of remembering the prayers. And I was like, oh my gosh, that makes great sense.
Yeah.
And I find it, because I'll do it sometimes as it comes out like a chant, like a transcendental chant. And it really kind of takes, as for someone like me, whose brain is like la, 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 all the time, to just do something that distracts that is insanely helpful for me. Because I can hardly sleep because I'm constantly
thinking ideas. Going. I know, I get it. But I do think it is a form of meditation. And, I go into, I find myself, I go into a church, I literally start choking up and crying. I don't know why. Like when I go in there, like, especially when there's no one in there. And the Catholic churches, at least it used to be the old rule that they would always keep the churches open. So when I go back to Boston, I go to my local church and I'll go in there at like, say, 8 a.m. or 9 and just sit there. And I don't know why. I just want to bawl my eyes.
There you go. No, I think it's ingrained and it meant something real and definitely should be paid attention to. And whenever I go back to my hometown, I go for jogs and I run around my Catholic church that I spent so much time in. And I just circle it and think about it. And I love it.
I mean, but you're like Howard Stern in a way, because he's so tall. Like you can't really hide a Joe McHale. Do you wear masks and things like that? I mean, I know today, but when you go and do people beep and be like, Joe, I mean, everyone knows.
Oh, if not with this beard. It depends on if I'm something that's popular. Because like when it was Community and Soup all the time, and then when those things kind of faded and no one watched The Great Indoors, so it was like, oh, this is what it feels like on the other side of it. And then I appear on The Masked Singer a few times, and then it kind of creeps back up again. But in Seattle, Seattle's a small town, so you get more exposure there. But I don't know, pretty much. There's a lot of tall white dudes walking around. That's how I see it.
Only one Joe McHale. Joe, when you think about working, I remember when you were working on Community and hearing all the interviews, and I always I was blown away by your interaction with Chevy Chase, because I would have been, growing up watching him and loving his movies and things and Saturday Night Live. I think I would have been so intimidated and just, I don't know. I know you, what I really admired, and I want to say this in the right way, was the fact that you stood your ground. Like whatever dispute you guys had on set, you weren't afraid. And I was like, wow, I remember saying like, Joe McHale has balls, because, I think, anyway, because I've heard things about him on other movies and stuff and how he's difficult. And by the way, I guess you get old, you get cranky, the business does things to you. I don't know. But I just really admired that you stood your ground. I was in awe, by the way. I didn't,
Oh, well, I didn't want, that was, believe me, when we got Chevy on the show, it was like, oh, this is great because we have one of the biggest comedy stars of all time.
And you probably grew up watching Fletch and all
that.
Yeah.
SNL and Vacation and like Modern Problems and, there's Caddyshack. There's so many hits that he was in. But he didn't want to be on set. He didn't want to, the Community was a lot of hours and there's a lot of talk about him being difficult, and a lot of that was true. And I think he would admit that. But yeah, I didn't want people messing with the show I was on. And Dan Harmon was also very protective of his show. And I mean, you know how it was like when you're making episodic television, you've got to complete these very big episodes. And then if you're lucky, you got 22 or 23 more to go that year. So it's one of those things where it's like, we don't have time, and we gotta keep it going. So I was always like, the hours are the hours, and we're going to be here for a long time. So we might as well try to make it pleasant. And I mean, believe me, there's a luxury. I was on a show that's the other thing. I was on a show that I loved, and I knew it was good. And I will be the first person to tell you that I'm on something bad, but I knew Community was good.
Yeah.
And I knew that Dan Harmon was incredibly, as evident. Yeah, he's obviously his work speaks for itself with Rick and Morty.
Rick and Morty, come on.
But yeah, extraordinary. So I knew for those of you at home that you're like, oh, you just kind of get on a show and you're just on a show. It's all tenuous. It's all very, like, who knows? And if it's going to stay. We were always told at the end of every season, like, hey, can this be the series finale as well as the season finale? And we're like, okay.
Yeah, I remember always by the skin of your teeth renewed. I'm like, well, guys, come on.
Always. Yeah. And everyone, that always pissed me off because we had better ratings than a lot of the shows on NBC at that point. But we had this narrative of barely getting by. And I don't think, the president of NBC at the time wasn't a huge fan of it. But I knew the show was good when I was on it, and I was going to fight for it until my fingernails came off.
And it was worth it because...
that's why I have no fingernails.
No, but here's the thing, Joel. It was worth it because not only was it great at the time, it rests as an incredible body of work. So there's a lot of people who've just started binging it during pandemic, or like for me, re-binging it or being able to rewatch those episodes. But I think where I've screwed up is the Chevys or those people would come on and I would start making compromises, because to cater to them. And I really admired you just like, we're here to make something great, and we're going to make something great, and you've got to come our way. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah, no, and I mean, obviously, there's been all sorts of things printed about him in that time, but yeah, we had such a good cast. Other than Donald Glover, I don't know what happened with his career, but
it didn't quite turn out well for him.
Yeah, I mean, but it's one of those things where I don't have time to wait around, and because Chevy could be real gold. And I mean, he could be, because you watch him on the show and he's super funny.
Yeah, he's
and it's just that he hated the hours, and he was very vocal about that. And it's just like, the hours this is what it is.
Yeah.
It's never going to be any different than this. And I was just like, I'm always like, everybody should enjoy these hours right now because it is a gift. And there's going to be a time when the hours there will be no hours because the show won't be here. Yeah. And then that was true. And then we got canceled, and then we got picked up again. But I look back, I'm obviously very happy with Netflix buying the show.
Yeah.
And it gave the show a whole new life. Great.
Yeah. That's going to be back in some way, because it's too bankable business wise not to. But, Joel, do you think you'll be able to keep this mentality as you star in films? Because when we talk about the Stephen Roots, they're able to show up because they have that mindset. Whereas Chevy was big star in the 80s, right? The day of the $20 million movie star. So think of how he was catered to. And now he's on a set for like 12 hours or 7 or 8 hours. And he's like, huh? But you still have that mentality. Do you think you'll be able to maintain that? Because I think there's a lot ahead for you.
I hope so.
No, there
Dear
is.
God.
No, there is.
The hours are always the hours. That's how, when it actually comes to physically being there and putting in the time, that's just the nature of the business. And when I hear people, I'm sure you once in a while I hear people be like, well, Hollywood, it's just fluff. You just show up and you have free food. No. And I was like, you motherfuckers don't get it. They had to change the rule for Teamsters because some of the hours were so bananas that they would be falling asleep while driving home.
Yeah.
And they had to change the rules for like hair and makeup and for all the different unions. Cause it's like, you have to get us hotel rooms if we're going to be working 20 hours a day. So for any of you out there who think that we're just sitting around or something, you people out of your minds. And I always go like, you'll never find the hardest working people are people in show business a lot of the time, because those gaffers and those guys, those teamsters, they're waking up at 3:30 in the morning and their day is not done until 12 at night. And then they got to do it all over again. And
they're not getting the energy back that you nail a scene and the director, you high five, you know what I mean? You're excited. Even the producer, is like, oh, wow. Yeah. And the gaffer and the people that are doing the grunt work, they're not getting that same high. They just have to keep going. And I always say it's easier to build a house than it is to make a movie. And because I've done both. It's literally easier to make a house than it is.
I don't doubt that.
It's so hard.
It's like baking a cake that is 1,000 different ingredients, and if you screw up any part of it, it's not going to be good.
Yeah. No. Oh my God. Now I'm getting depressed. I'm going to go back. Listen. Okay. So we'll talk about Happily, which your film that's out coming out now, or is it out?
March 19th.
March 19th. So this to me brought me back to the good old days of really dark comedies. I would say dark dramedy, because I left the movie going, wait, what? About maybe, yeah, you start thinking of your own life. All right, so tell me, like, when you read the script, did you get it right away?
No. I mean, I had to reread it, and I mean, I read it and I knew what it was about, but I reread it because it's definitely challenging and definitely, I thought it was really funny. The ending is pretty crazy, and so I really loved, I trusted the director, Ben David Grabinski. So I was like, all right, he knows what he's doing. He also wrote it. And so I thought the premise of this married couple that can't keep their hands off of each other was like a really great starting point. And you don't see that I had never seen that in a movie.
No. And after they were together for 14 years, that's the big thing. This couple's together for 14 years without giving too much away. And they're behaving as if they've been dating for a month, and it's got all the friends confused at best, and at worst, they're pissed. They hate them. And it takes you on this, very bizarre journey, but there's a lot of meaning that comes out of it. It really gets you thinking.
Yeah. I mean, also, it looks beautiful. It's beautifully made. Yes. But then you get Carrie Bechet, who's just one of the better actors on the planet.
Yes.
And it's really easy to act with her. And I was like, oh, there's a real actor in the room. Here she is. And so when she became a part of it, I was like, oh, we're going to be just fine. We're going to be, we're much more than fine. And it's weird to think, because we shot it 2 years ago and it was supposed to go to the Tribeca Film Festival, and now last May, and then last April, and now finally it's coming out. So we're all very happy. And I said I wasn't going to shave until, the movie was released.
So 2 years later. And wait, is it
doggy?
It's Winnie. Are they going to put it in a theater? Is it going to make it to whatever theaters are open? Yeah.
I think
Kelsey's saying yes.
So. Yeah. I think it's all released at the same time.
Go. All right, Joe, go to your next meeting.
Thank you, Joe.
Honestly,
thanks so much, Joe. You're the best.
So great to talk to you guys.
Appreciate you.
All right.
Bye.
Guys, thank you. Let's have dinner.
Yes. Have supper, as we say.
Let's have supper.
With the puppies. Bye, Joel.
Bye, Joe.
Kevin, what a fun combo.
Yeah, I thought it was a good conversation.
I love him. He's so awesome.
Such a great guy.
He's so light, too. Yeah. That's what a lot of comedians are very...
dark and heavy.
Margaret and him both are...
very light.
But
that's why they're going to make it into the century.
Yeah.
And all the curmudgeons aren't going to make it.
Yeah. What a great attitude. And it's like what you always kind of imparted on us at AfterBuzz, Kev. It's like, you got to do the work. You can't just show up. You got to do the work.
Yeah.
Yeah, so much of it. My God, a lot of takeaway here.
Yeah.
But, it's like... he uses the fear to motivate him. I think that his anxiety, he leaned into it.
Yeah.
So whatever you're anxious about, meet it. He meets it. And then he does have an amazing rock as a wife, which is the first thing he said.
Huge.
She has a rock
Instantly.
of a partner,
Instantly.
which I know makes a very big difference.
I liked what did he say? I'm going to find a way to beat the system. I think that's a cool mindset.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
It's like if you have, probably for him, it felt like the world was against him growing up. So he's like, all right, screw you guys. Wow.
I'm going to beat the system. But by the way, like when we really break it down, any lofty dream you have is going to require you to beat the system.
Yeah.
So let's say you want to open, I'll say a pizza shop because that's what I want to do one day, just to hang around, give away free pizza to my friends. But if you want to have that great pizza shop, and you know what, like you're going to have to find a way to beat the system because the system's not set up for you to just open a store and make a lot of money.
You're right.
Right? Like that's not life. Like, so yeah, really special guy.
Yeah, he's awesome.
What a good guy. I was taken by his faith in God.
Me too. I was surprised by that. But I loved his answer.
Yeah.
He was just like, yeah.
I really liked what he talked about with cancel culture and those kind of things, like where he says like comedy follows the culture. So it's not necessarily that, people are changing the way we're doing things. It's that's how comedy is now, and it's constantly evolving.
Yeah.
I really wanted to ask him about Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, because that's like the episode of Community that they've taken off the air because of
Steven. I'm sorry. All right, so Steven, in our pre-meetings, make sure you bring that up, because I would have definitely given you the hot tag, because I would have loved.
I just didn't want to interrupt you because you're saying some great stuff.
Yeah. Oh, damn. He probably would.
We got to get him back.
We'll get him back.
Yeah, we got to get him back.
Find out.
I'd say one more thing I loved, one more nugget that I'm going to start to do.
What?
He was talking about with fear when he's scared of things. He's like, okay, how are you going to overcome this? And then what are you going to do? Like those two questions. It's like, okay, stop. I'm freaking out. I'm anxious. How am I going to overcome this? And then what am I going to do? So it's like,
and then we hear from other successful people on the show. Go back to Tim's story about taking inventory and being aware. And he was constantly aware.
Yep.
Like, okay, I've got dyslexia, so I need to find the workaround.
Yep.
Or I've got to find a way to beat the system. So I'm going to take really easy classes to have a high GPA. Like, I didn't think like that. I just was going through life, taking whatever classes came to me, whatever they put on my,
go
assigned
talk to
me.
the teachers I knew would help me. Like, so smart.
Yeah.
He treated life like a game. He beat us.
Yeah. Well, I think most of us, unfortunately, most of us regular folk, we are just tripping through life. We're just, getting up and doing our best, bumping our head. We continue to just keep bumping the head, keep going without taking that pause and doing some evaluation and which we're hearing from other people who are successful that they're doing it. So, yeah, really, really nice interview.
And he loved Winnie.
And he loved Vincenza, and he's got his 3 doggies too. Yeah. Okay, you guys, well, listen, please, best way you can help us right now is Maria is getting strong and doing a little TCB, taking care of business out in LA, is to just keep tuning in. I promise she'll be back. This is very stressful for me. As just even this, it was like, looking at the week of shows, I'm like, oh my goodness, it takes me a lot of focus to be able to do this. It's hard. And then with Joel, I was like, oh man, because usually it's like with the A-list, it's like I want Maria to be. So
you did a great job though.
Oh, thank you. Well, he made it. He made it easy. But please, guys, keep tuning in, and if you could continue to tell friends about us and share. At Better Together with Maria, our Instagram, we're continuing to put up as much valuable information, a lot of good self-help hacks and tips. So if you subscribe to that, I think you'll find it to be really rewarding.
I agree.
And then iTunes at Apple Podcasts, always we love those reviews. And until we come back, what, Kelsey? What does Auntie Maria say?
Oh, she says, be nice people. Make good choices and be present. And I'm going to add one more thing. Take inventory.
Take inventory. Booyah.
Boom. Love you guys.